Hello and welcome. My name is Jack Lasky and I'm one of the founders at AssetLayer, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this tutorial about how to integrate AssetLayer into your Unity app. This is going to be the first of two tutorials here, and the second one, the one today is going to cover sort of your basic integration and how to integrate AssetLayer into your game within the editor, and then the second video is going to cover more build settings, authentication, and actually publishing your game, in this case to web, although we do support many other platforms. So let me jump in here first into our documentation. You'll see here that we've got this guide, how to integrate AssetLayer into your Unity game, and this guide is going to walk you through everything we do in this video and the next video. So I highly recommend checking this out and following along. Also, if you're unfamiliar with AssetLayer overall, I would definitely point you to our core concepts section here, and that'll kind of walk you through AssetLayer and the main things that you need to understand to really take in the tutorial in its fullest, although I'll do my best to keep everyone up to speed as we go through here. So let me head back to AssetLayer and I'm going to log in. All I need is my email address, and I'm going to get sent a code. This is our sort of universal login, which you can use inside of your game, and it sort of provides the maximum degree of interoperability for your players and your assets. We are building support for other types of authentication systems, so if you want to use built-in authentication systems with Steam or the App Store, Play Store, those types of things, we can support that as well. So the first step whenever I'm creating an AssetLayer project is to create a new AssetLayer app. So I'm going to call this app Unity Tutorial App, and I'm just going to skip these other parts for now, go ahead and create my app. And here we're going to see the things that we need to actually connect our app to the Unity editor. So our app ID, our app secret, and the DID token. DID stands for Decentralized ID Token, and this, like I mentioned, is kind of the foundation of our interoperable authentication system. And so by bringing our DID token into the Unity editor, we'll be able to play our games as ourselves inside the editor, which is obviously essential for being able to test and develop your game. So now I'm going to jump over here into the Unity Hub. You can see that we're using the latest version. We're supporting versions 2022 and later, looking to potentially support 2021 versions, TBD. You'll also see that I have the Android, macOS, WebGL, iOS, Windows build support on all these versions of the editor, and that's because the AssetLayer Unity SDK actually takes advantage of all these in order to export assets as asset bundles to AssetLayer so that they can be delivered into games at runtime. And by default, we export assets for all these platforms so that we can maximize interoperability. So now I'm going to go ahead and just create a new 3D project. Call it Unity Tutorial. So now I'm here inside of the actual editor. So our first step is to open up the package manager and install the AssetLayer Unity SDK. The link to do this, the Git URL, is in the documentation, and all you have to do is press this little plus button and select Import with Git URL, and then paste in that URL, and you'll be good to go. It'll install the latest version of the package. You can see that the package is still in beta, and we're pushing regular updates, and so the nice thing about Package Manager is whenever we push an update, you can pull it into your project right away. So if you find any kind of bug or need a new feature, go ahead and let us know in Discord, and we'll drop an update right away with whatever you need, and you can pull it into your project easily. So now that we have installed the SDK, you'll see in your Assets menu here that there's a new option, AssetLayer. And this contains really kind of everything you're going to want to do actually inside of the Unity editor. So the first step is going to be to select this Import Essentials button, and this is going to actually download some very useful files directly into your assets folder, some prefabs that we're going to be using as part of the tutorial, a bunch of assets for the tutorial itself, which is built into the SDK. All right, so now you can see this new Asset Layer Unity SDK folder inside of our assets folder, and this scene called tutorial is going to be our canvas for today. So we can go ahead and open that up. And basically all this is right now is a very, very simple game where you start at the beginning of a platform with the ball and you roll down the platform and you can collect coins, and if you fall off you start at the beginning, and if you get to the end of the platform and cross the finish line, you win. So barely a game, but it's going to allow us to easily demonstrate some important concepts. By the way, you're going to need this TMP Essentials package to be up to date. It's one of our dependencies, so we'll just go ahead and import this. All right. So our next step here is going to be to actually connect our Asset Layer app that we just created with this new Unity project. So I'm going to go and jump back into the Asset Layer app and grab my app ID, my app secret, and a DID token, and put them into the project settings in Unity. So grab my app ID, my app secret, and of course you shouldn't show your app secret in plain text in a tutorial, so I'll reset my app secret later. Now I'll generate a new DID token, and this DID token is specifically for this app that I just created, Unity Tutorial app, and for me as a player. So this is going to allow me to play as myself in the editor. So the next step is to create a slot for our app. If you're not familiar with slots, I definitely recommend checking out the slots page in our core concepts within our documentation. At a high level, slots group collection of assets by function. So one of the obviously core functions in this tutorial are our ball characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a ball characters slot. And slots have expressions, and expressions, again, you can read about in more depth in the core concepts. But expressions are basically places where we can store assets expressions are basically places where we can store files for assets within our slot. And because these assets share the same functionality as part of the same slot, it makes sense that they require the same sorts of assets as one another. So all slots come with a menu view expression, and this is just a 300 by 300 image, which is used to display your collection or your asset within inventories or marketplaces, things like that. And then we're going to add an expression of Unity type. We'll go ahead and call this Unity expression, and this is basically the expression we're going to use to actually upload our asset bundles and Unity package directly from the editor when we create our collection. This Unity expression type has 6 expression attributes, and each attribute contains a specific file. So 5 of them are asset bundle, or contain asset bundles, so an asset bundle for iOS, for Android, for Mac, for Windows, and for WebGL. And then the 6th expression attribute is a Unity package, and that allows us to actually go ahead and import our assets directly from Asset Layer into the editor. And this can be really helpful if you're trying to share your assets with other developers. All right, so we're going to create a collection from some of the ball characters that we can find in our tutorial assets folder. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new collection for the red ball. So I right click and I select Asset Layer and then create new collection. And then I'm going to pull up this menu, which is our collection creation interface. I give my collection a name. I select the slot, which is the one we just created. I'm going to select the expression we just created. I could create a new expression directly from the editor because you can have multiple Unity expressions where, let's say that you have different prefabs in Unity that you need to use at different times depending on the context in your game. You could store both of those in the same asset, but that's sort of outside the scope of this tutorial, so we're just going to use the expression that we already created. We'll define a max supply, and we'll choose a number to mint immediately, and these are just going to mint directly into my wallet as a user. You'll see this upload menu view expression option as well. If I had an image that I wanted to use as the menu view expression, I could select that from my editor. If nothing is selected, then we'll just automatically generate one for you. And this is just something that you can always replace in the future if you have a more sort of professional or stylized image that you want to use, but this is just helpful for keeping things organized and easy for while you're developing your application. I'll go ahead and actually change this to 50 just to line up with another demo that we're doing. Once we're ready, we can press submit and then let the collection create. It's going to take a second because it's exporting, or it's creating and then exporting 5 asset bundles for each of the different platforms and then the Unity package. We actually provide an option to go ahead and upload all of the changes that you've made to any of the assets in your Unity project directly to Asset Layer all at once, so that you don't have to sit there and wait for each one to be done and then upload the next one. And so you can refer to our documentation for more information on how that feature works. All right, we've got a successful collection creation here. So now I can jump back over to the Asset Layer app, and I can see this new red ball collection. I can see all of the collection expressions that have been uploaded through the editor, the various asset bundles, the Unity package, and then the menu view. Now what I'll do is I'll actually go to my assets. So I'm kind of switching over to my actual user account, and I can look at the assets I own from this app, and I can see I own 10 red balls that I just minted. And I can actually flip through the different expressions. So I can go and check out this Unity expression and actually inspect my ball directly in the Asset Layer app. It's not a very cool asset necessarily, but you could imagine that this is a much more intricate and interesting character that a player in your game might want to be able to inspect. Or if you were trying to buy something in the marketplace, you might want to inspect it. So it's a useful feature. Now I'll go ahead and grab the asset ID, and we're going to use that to import the asset directly into our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this blue ball character and replace it with an Asset Layer game object. So the Asset Layer game object is a child of this player game object, and the player game object actually has the player controller script. And then what this Asset Layer game object will do is it will import the asset from Asset Layer to become the child of this player game object. So to start, what we'll do is we'll just paste in that asset ID we grabbed from the dashboard, and you can see when we do so and we press play, we get that red ball asset that we just created. So it doesn't matter that this red ball prefab is actually in our project. This came directly from Asset Layer as an asset bundle, and so it's something that you can bring into your game at runtime and bring into other games at runtime. And that's really the power of this method of creating assets. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an inventory to my scene. And the inventory is going to show me all of the assets that I own from a slot that I specify or multiple slots that I specify. If you don't have an event system, then your inventory won't work, but actually if we automatically create an event system when you bring the inventory into your scene, so just don't delete it. Let me grab my slot ID. and I'm going to then paste it in here to my inventory. And I can trigger the inventory using the key I. That's sort of the default setting. Of course, you can adjust the inventory to be triggered by a button in your scene or any other control. You can have multiple inventories that are configured differently. And then when a selection is made from the inventory, it sends an event. By default, the asset layer game object will look for that event, and then whatever asset is specified by the event, the asset layer game object will load that asset. But you can handle that event however you want inside of your application. All right, so as a final step here, what we're going to do is show you how to actually use assets from somebody else's app in your app. So the first step here is to actually get permission. So I'm going to get permission from an app that we created called Rolltopia. I'm choosing Rolltopia because the characters in Rolltopia are also ball-shaped. They're spherical, and they're going to work really well in this tutorial. You know, spoiler alert, that's why we chose using a ball as the character for your tutorial. But whenever you're using assets from someone else's app, you're typically, going to be creating your game around those assets anyway. So it's a good example of how to use asset layer. And by the way, if you don't have any assets from Rolltopia, just head to rolltopia.games and we'll give you free rollies. And if you play, you can earn more rollies and get some rare rollies, and it's a fun game. So I request read permission from Rolltopia, and Rolltopia is actually set up to automatically grant read permission, but I'm still going to provide a reason why I'm using the assets. And for apps that aren't automatically granting various accesses, this is an important step to sort of explain why you want to use these assets, and potentially it'll also require communication outside of the app. But now that I've gotten permission from Rolltopia, you can see here it's been granted automatically. What I can do is I can go back to my slots, and I can actually add foreign slots. So a foreign slot is a slot from somebody else's app. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rollies slot into my app, and now I'll have access to, when a user logs into my game, I can see what rollies they own, and I can load them into my game. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and delete the slot ID, and now it'll automatically, since there's no slot ID specified, it'll just choose all the slots in my app, and press play, pull up my inventory. And by the way, the reason the red ball loaded right away is because it'll look at your player prefs, and whatever the last asset was that you played with, it'll load that in by default. And you can change that logic if you need to. So you'll see I have my two slots here. Because I haven't uploaded a slot image for the ball characters, it's just using an asset layer logo. And you can see the rollies slot image. So I'll select from my rollies here. I'll go ahead and use my rarest rollie named Kenneth. And I select Kenneth, and boom. The rollie is loaded into the app, and my player controller is set up to work well with the rollie. So there I'm rolling around, I'm triggering the animations, and it works great. So that's how you can set up your game with asset layer in a nutshell. It's a quick process, and it's extremely easy not only to create your own assets that you can use, but also to use assets from other applications. So I hope this was really helpful. In the next video, we'll be covering how to actually build your game. So we'll be adding a login step so you can authenticate players. We'll build the game, and then we'll build it for WebGL, and we'll publish it to web using the asset layer game server and the asset layer sample app. So looking forward to that. I hope you join us there, and thanks again for tuning in.